Hi, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Rescue Talk. I'm your host, Amy Major, and of course, I have my two other co hosts with me, Jordan Start and Cynthia Maroon. We are very, very grateful to be here again. We're kind of starting up the show again after we did recently have a little bit of a loss with our show, which we want to talk about today. It is very difficult to talk about it because it is something very near and dear to our heart. And we did post something on it on Facebook. We didn't post anything on YouTube just yet, but this will be our first public statement on video about what did happen. And as some of you know, we did have four hosts on the show. We did have one person leave due to obligation to other shows, but we did have a co-host, Gigi Brakeville, that was with us, a wonderful host, wonderful member, wonderful friend. She did actually end up passing away recently over the last few weeks. And so myself and my team, my co-hosts here, we needed some time to reflect on that and to give Gigi respect and honor of her to give time to before we recorded again and kind of started a new show because I felt that Gigi's essence will still be with us with this show. And it's not necessarily a rebooting or restarting, but just a little bit of a change so that the message of what Gigi wanted us to bring to the world will continue on. But if some of you aren't aware of who Gigi was, she was one of our co-hosts that I'd asked a while ago to be on my show. She's a wonderful shaman and medium and healer and just absolutely amazing person overall. She was a mother and a wife and a friend to so many people. She was unfortunately battling a cancer for some time. And just sometimes the soul decides that they're ready to move on. And she was a very spiritual person and that had many connections to the spirit world. And I feel that her soul knew that there was so much life left in her that continue into the spirit world and continue on this day to affect us, to heal us, to help us, and mentor us from the spirit world. And so we honor Gigi with everything we do going forward. The essence of her soul, her spirit, her energy, and her wisdom will stay with us with this show. And so we just wanted everyone to know that we needed some time because, as everybody know, personal grief takes personal time. Everybody grieves at their own rate. There is no time limit. There's no schedule for grieving and for loss. And we did want to discuss a little bit on the show, a little bit about loss and how many people can move through it or how to incorporate that loss into your life because it isn't necessarily something that you can move away from, but learn to live with, especially if the person that you've lost was very closely connected to you and integrated into every aspect of your life. Some grieving processes take longer, and sometimes they last a lifetime. And so our show is devoted to spirit rescue, but spirit rescue also incorporates transition of souls, the afterlife, the death process, and of course, grieving of us here that are behind, looking for the essence of who they are, where they've gone, have they connected with us, what messages can we receive from them, how can we know if they're okay. Even mediums have these questions too. We connect to the spirit world, but we still have our own questions and we still have our own loss and we still have our own pain connected to the loss of friends and family and loved ones. So we really wanted to dedicate a little bit of time on this show to discuss loss, to discuss grief, and a little bit of the transition process, so that all of you can share your personal connections as well with us. And any of you that want to reach out to connect with us and just speak your comments, your piece, your advice, or even anything that you'd like to say about Gigi, because I know she touched many of you, and her wisdom helped many people. And I feel like if you feel like she affected you in a great way, inspired you, helped you change, helped you understand things a little bit more, then please feel free to leave some comments below, and just, you know, just saying a thank you to her would be a very honorable thing to do. And I would be very grateful to see that. I will definitely be leaving my messages for her below as well. Cynthia or Jordan, do you have anything to say about Gigi or about grief or loss that you'd like to add?
Well, just in regards to Gigi specifically, if all I had to go on was her outlook or her attitude about battling this cancer, I would think she'd be here
Yeah,
because she had an amazing attitude towards this fight. And it wasn't one that was ungrounded. She was very grounded and understood that this was a serious battle. She
yeah,
knew, and but she also knew very strongly she had choice when it was her time. And there were private conversations we had had where she understood, where she had expressed that, in a general way. And
yeah.
uh, you know, the, I just I'm grateful that I was able to cross paths with her. And every week, like every time we got together to do this show, um, she always left a very positive impact on me and my energy. And that she wasn't even trying. Like she was just being herself. And that was the natural side effect of her. And so
Right.
I feel honored to have had that experience, truly.
Well, I think that she was just an amazing woman in general with such a kind heart. That so many people could feel it. Just having a conversation with her, you felt true, genuine love from her. And I
Yeah.
think losing someone that is so wonderful, I think that's the hardest part. You
Yeah.
know, knowing how much of an impact they made in so many lives, and then feeling almost, and this is a very human reaction, is feeling a little angry that spirit took that away.
Yeah.
Because it's like we need her here. We need her wisdom, we need her strength, we need her courage. And whenever I say something like that, I always hear a spirit say, "Don't you think she could do it here?" And I
Yeah,
said,
that's
"I
what I
know, but it's not the same." you know. So it's hard. But that's a human thought process. It's like, how could you take her from us?
Mhm.
So I think many people think that, when they lose someone that they love, kind of like, how could you take them from us? And we do feel that something has been taken away from us, as if stolen from us. And when I think about grief, I don't think necessarily about just losing the individual now. I think about all the opportunities that are also lost, all the opportunities of the future that we could have had together, all the
Yeah.
things they could have done in the future. So I feel like opportunities and wonderful experiences that we could have had. When you're going through the grieving process, you grieve that
Yeah.
just as much as you grieve the person themselves. And so whenever again I go to spirit and ask them, how can I get through this, or how can I help somebody else get through this, the first thing that came to me was, you have to stop thinking that you're letting someone go. This
Mhm.
isn't an end. This isn't a goodbye. This is a change. They're like, do you notice that we say the word transition? We don't
Mhm.
say death. So when you're thinking of death in your own vocabulary and in your constructive universe, you see an ending. To us here in the spirit world, we see change. They're never going to leave you. They can't. We are always together as one. So when you think of losing someone, just think you've lost their physical presence. And now we need to change and transition the relationship to now be one where it's spirit connecting to spirit. And they say this helps navigate you through the grieving process, because when you're finally truly ready to communicate with them, they will be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a wonderful way to look at the loss of someone that you care for. I mean, I've lost 3 very, very close friends of mine just in 3 years that were highly inspirational and meaningful, and some of the closest friends I've had. And I've lost 3 in 3 years. And I'm like, they come in threes, Amy. I'm like, oh, but I've connected with them, not just because I'm a medium, but because I knew that I could, and I knew that they were there, and I knew they were still giving me a hard time on the other side just as much as they would when they were here. And, as a medium, we recognize that they don't change. They're still them. You're still you. And we just need to adapt to a different form of relationship with each other. The hardest part is not to physically have them with
Yes.
you. And we are such a physical reality in everything we do. I'm not going to believe it unless I physically see it or I physically touch it. We are so attached to the physicality of things that it's hard for us to adapt to a more spiritual relationship. Even though
You know,
we feel like we can connect to the universe, even though I feel like we can connect to other souls, um, we still have a hard time with it, because once we have a physical connection with someone, we become attached to that, and it's hard to move away from that form of relationship. Did somebody say something
Yeah,
before?
it was me interrupting. I'm sorry. I just had this thought like pop in my head when you were talking about the importance of physicality. And the thought that came to mind is if it's in front of me, I don't have to rely on self-trust.
Yeah,
Like it could be
Yeah.
a potential trigger, right? So
Yes.
like if something's in front of me, nobody can prove me wrong. It's right here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there might be something around that. You might have intuition that they're around and you can feel them, but like they're not physically here. So I'm not going to talk about that, because I can't prove it. So sometimes there's wounding that comes up even in that.
right.
So that was kind of what came to mind. And I thought it was an interesting perspective linking those things about why we're so physical. And it's obvious we live in a physical realm, but there's that piece to it as well. I think that's important to take into consideration. And then the other thing was about the physical stuff is there's this expression associated with grief, that grief is love with nowhere to go, because you can't hug them, you can't hold them, you can't look in their eyes. And that is so, so painful. When you are here, it can breed such loneliness. And in traditional talk therapy, and back in my previous career, when I would sit down with people and work through grief, there are grief like approaches, grief healing approaches that heavily emphasize ongoing bonds.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're talking about, Amy. You're talking about transitioning, and that it's just a transition and they're not gone. It's just a change in a different type of relationship. Well, there are actual non-spiritual interventions that actually prioritize the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there really is wisdom in that. It's hard to achieve because of the physical thing, but it is important to explore is how can I have an ongoing bond with that person, even though they've transitioned?
Yeah. It's still hard.
Yeah.
It's easy when you're a spiritual person. We go into meditation, we connect to the spirit world all the time. We have our visitations of spirit, but for people that are non-spiritual, very much grounded into the physical world, it's very difficult for them to see this. And I get that. And
Yeah.
doing the spiritual counseling work as a minister, working with individuals with grief counseling, is my job to help bridge the gap of the physical and spiritual world so that they understand the signs, the messages, the ways in which the spirit world can communicate with us in a physical way. So, people that are non spiritual, that can't go into meditation and feel like they can't connect, they can still receive these messages. And that's why so many mediums go with the main signs from spirit. You know, you have the cardinal and the butterfly and the dimes from heaven, and so many different ways to see the physical presence of spirit around you. I like to go another step further just because I'm picky and stubborn. I like to have a personal message. I like to have a personal sign, such as our favorite song on the radio, or I'd like to see a billboard sign of like their favorite movie. I'd like something that made our personal connection and our bond special. I'd like to see that somehow popping up in the physical world to reaffirm that we still have this bond together. And so many times I'll ask my client, what would you like to see that's personal between the two of you, that can confirm for you and validate that their presence is with you? And they have to kind of sit and they have to think about it for a little bit. But I'm like, you'll figure it out. Because and they're like, how will the spirit world know if, once I think of it? And I said, well, if it's personal to the two of you, they'll know it and you'll know it. But then they can also sense it. They can feel it. They can see it. They can hear it. They can feel it. They can feel everything from you. So every time you have a thought, they know it. Even the thoughts you don't want them to know, they know it. And so just think about what's personal, the bond that you shared together, and how you can create an image through that connection and how you can see it from the spirit world. And I sometimes say, make it weird, make it unique, make it something that you know that you would never see in the physical world unless it was like I would always say, look for like a pink giraffe with black dots, or look for a green hippopotamus, or look, look for a sign of a movie with like a big heart around it or something. Look, go the extra mile, ask for something really unique and something the spirit
Mhm.
world is really going to have to work at to get
Yeah.
that sign to you, that you just didn't come across it. It wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't just something that popped up and you're like, you're making it a sign because
Mhm.
you're hoping it's the sign from the spirit world, but make it very unique so that you know without a shadow of a doubt that spirit coming through saying, I'm here with you. Do either one of you have any like crazy signs that you guys have, like with your guides or with spirit or anything? Me, my sign with my dad was always Fiddler on the Roof. That was his movie. He was Jewish. He used to sing that song all the time. We had him perform it on his birthdays. It was because he was like a poor man that always wanted to have money. So that was his favorite song, because he would sing If I Were a Rich Man. And so, when I was first getting involved in spirit, I thought of that movie. I'm like, okay, well, show me this movie, because, you don't see it that often. And it's like the next day, they're showing me the signs of the movie. And I'm like, I'm not convinced. And the spirit world's like, hello, you just asked for this sign. And I'm like, yeah, but I want it big. I want it huge. I wanted it to be like a big sign. And so I'm traveling on the road the next day to drop my kids off at the daycare. And there's a huge banner going across the street that said Fiddler on the Roof coming to the Opera House the very next day. And then I heard Spirit say, "Was that big enough for you?"
I love that.
So
That's
it was
amazing.
just like, so I didn't want just any particular sign to come through. I wanted it to be very specific, and I was only going to get it one way. Another example I had was my guides were trying to get through to me. Obviously, I do a lot of movie stuff because I watched movies like constantly as a kid, and I still do it as an adult. But my favorite movie, everybody knows, is The Wizard of Oz. And so when I was asking for a sign from my guides, I said, I really want to see The Wizard of Oz. And I said, Bah, I'll only take it if it's on TV. I mean, I don't want to see it on a poster. I don't want to hear people talk about it. I don't want to see memorabilia about it. I don't care. I want to see The Wizard of Oz on TV. On TV. And they're like, okay, we'll give it some time. 2 weeks goes by, nothing. And I'm like, they didn't give me the sign. And so I had to go to the high school. My daughter had an IEP with special education. And I'm sitting there in the office and they had a poster of the Wizard of Oz. And I said, nope, not going to take it. I told you I was stubborn. So I'm like, I'm not taking it. That's not good enough for me. And I'm wearing like this pink fuchsia shirt in there. And all of a sudden, this woman walks in the door. She's wearing the same color I am. She comes, she sits down right next to me. And she is like, oh, The Wizard of Oz. And I'm like, yeah, I love that movie. It's my favorite movie. And we start talking about it. She's like, you know what? That's so odd. She's like, I just received a gift from a friend and it was a lunchbox. And I'm like, oh. And she's like, yeah, it was a lunchbox with the shape of a television. And on the television, it had The Wizard of Oz. And I stopped like, and I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, it was the shape of a television with the Wizard of Oz scene on the TV. And I started hysterically laughing in that office. And all the teachers were like looking at me like, this girl's loony. I knew at that moment my guides got creative because they're like, yeah,
Yep.
we can put you
Yep.
on TV, or can we go the extra mile and say it's a television with the Wizard of Oz on it, and to have someone wear the same exact color sit right next to me talking about it. There's more than just a coincidence there.
Mhm.
And I heard my guides laughing as they were bringing that message through to me. They're like, oh, we were going to give it to you. So it was things like that that happens that instinctively in your soul, in your heart, these are real signs. And so after a while, my guides asked me to stop asking for signs because they're like, eventually you're just going to have to believe and have faith that these things are real and you have to stop asking for signs. And so I did. Okay, I lied. They just said I lied. I lied. I still asked for signs.
Keeping it real, guys.
I
Keeping
was
it
going
real.
to say I stopped asking. They just said, no, you don't. So, okay. So whenever I really need a sign of something, I still ask for it. But forget about that. So if any of you feel like you need just that
Mhm.
proof that your loved ones are with you, they can show it to you.
Yeah.
Another example, and I'm gonna let these ladies talk because I can keep going. One of my best friends, Victoria Ladd, passed away almost 2 years ago. It was September 2023. She and I had a friendship for 17 years. We're the kind of friendship that we wouldn't even talk for 6 months at a time because we're both adults. We have our own lives. But she and I were best friends early, really, really close friends. And she was a spiritual medium. She was a very strong protector, very much into the Archangel Michael energy. And her main totem was, Anatone was the wolf. I'm a panther, so you get a wolf and a panther together and you're going to have friction. But we got along so well because we were the yin and the yang, we were the polarity of each other, and it worked. But she was a very strong-willed woman. So in this relationship, we hadn't talked for about 6 months. And I knew that she was having issues. She had had a stroke a few years prior and going to the doctor every now and then, but I never really thought it was that bad. And I remember going into meditation one day, and all of a sudden, this huge wolf, gray wolf, stepped into my meditation, and it was just looking at me. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Not to be rude, but you're not on my team. I'm like, go to Vicky. She's the wolf person. And the wolf kept staring at me. And I'm like, no, you're, go away. I was like, you're not part of my team. It's nice, go. And of course, it walked away. A few weeks later, I went into meditation again, and popped the wolf. And I said, are you here for something in particular? Didn't say a word. It was just there. It's just huge, like the size of a werewolf. It was huge. And I couldn't figure out what it was there for. And I'm like, you do know Vicky is your person, not me. Go to her. And so it walked off again. No more than 2 weeks later, I found a popping up online on Facebook that said that Vicky had actually passed away 6 months prior to finding that out. No one had told me. Her brother didn't know how to reach me. Um, and I had no clue. I was a bit in shock. But all of a sudden, it dawned on me the wolf was her, trying to come through in meditation to let me know that she was with me. And it never dawned on, I never thought of it because I didn't know that she had died. So as soon as I knew that, I was just like, she was trying to tell me this whole time. And I'm a medium of over almost 25 years of mediumship. And I'm like, hello, wake up. Your best friend's trying to get through to you, and you didn't figure it out. And spirits, like, you have no idea how many people never figure this out. They see signs all the time. They get messages all the time. They get dreams all the time. But they never do they ever figure it out. It never dawns on them. They don't have the awareness that this is actually spirit coming through to let them know that they're okay and they're still with you. But it takes like someone hitting you over the head saying, pay attention. But it's hard when it's not in your awareness. Because why would I think this wolf was her? But now that I know that she's gone, it's been about a year since then, I'll ask for the wolf to come through. And she's like, nope, I'm not coming through. You told me to go away. Yeah, that was just our relationship. We would just banter with each other. And she and I have the same type of relationship as when she's in spirit.
Yeah.
And it also made me realize that she's not in a physical body, which means she has more power now, which I really need to watch out now because she's really coming for me to give me a hard time, just like she was when she was here. And I'm going to tell you, everything that they were becomes amplified. They become stronger. They become more powerful. They become an endless energy source. And most of it's love, support, guidance, everything they're trying to do to help you with your own journey. And so I now have seen signs in many different ways from the spirit world. You can have a physical manifestation, you can have the lights flickering, you can have something coming to you in your dreams, you can get the whisper, you can get a feeling. There's so many more tools and signs and techniques that the spirit world will use to get through to you. yeah, you got the pennies and the feathers and the doves and everything, but wouldn't you rather it be a little bit more personal to you and to them? So my suggestion is find your connectiveness through an image, a song, a sign, an object that whenever it appears for you, you know that they're with you, and it means everything. It really does. Do either one of you want to share anything that you guys have experienced? It can't be nearly as stubborn as me with the signs, but I don't know, Jordan, you might be.
We're pretty stubborn. I think for both me and Cynthia, we're stubborn.
You might be.
That's why we were your students.
Yeah.
We needed someone equally as stubborn to get us through the weeds.
That's right. It's true.
No, for sure. I mean, as you were speaking, I was thinking about some of the losses that I've gone through in my life. And I was thinking about one in particular, and it was a little bit different in regards to the dynamics. I've had loved ones who had passed away who incredibly loving, supportive. That part of them never ceased to exist. If anything, as you were saying, it was amplified. But there was one dynamic in particular where when they were here in the physical, we weren't close. We there was never any high conflict, but we were not close. Just due to family dynamics, I was a little bit more alienated and ostracized a little bit. And I was incredibly sad when they passed. But to be honest, because I think grief looks so different for different people, I was sad, but I was sad for more of what could have been because I didn't have that connection with them in the physical. And something that I found very interesting is that when I did start feeling this person come around, I found I've always heard like, okay, well, they stayed the same. He didn't feel quite the same. And when I went to my team to kind of ask about what was kind of going on, because I felt a lot of remorse from him. And it wasn't remorse for his life. It was remorse for the loss of connection that he could have had with me. And I remember I went to my team and I said, hey, like, what's kind of going on here? And they said, well, do you think opportunities for healing finish when the physical body has passed? That's not the case. They said, there's always opportunity for growth and healing of a soul. And they said, now, sometimes it's a little bit, people could be stubborn. And I went, Jordan, you're stubborn. You can dig your heels in. So can souls. It can take them a little bit longer. But there's always opportunity to connect with the more authentic person and what I was learning was that the disconnect that I felt in the physical in our relationship was a manifestation of this person's own wounding that was getting in the way of them being able to connect. But at their core self, they were love, they were light. And so while they were on the other side, they did a lot of healing work. And they started to recognize a little bit more of who I was and the opportunities that were missed to have connection with me, but also how their own ego, their own wounding had impacted how they participated in the physical. And so I found it really interesting because when I've had other family members pass, I would talk about this incident in my life and I'd say, our relationship didn't end when the physical body passed. I understand I'm a medium, so I have a little bit more of a connection, but in regards of, going into meditation and having those conversations and those pieces. But I said, it's interesting because I would kind of argue, at least in this dynamic, and again, obviously every dynamic is so different, but in this particular dynamic, we're actually closer now than what we were before. We were able to connect in a much different way. It's different for sure. I don't have them in the physical here, but when I do feel them come in, the energy that projects off of them to me is very different than what I experience physically in the physical, but also energetically what I would feel as a child. And so I thought that was something to kind of notice, that people can shift, people can grow, people can change just as much as they can in the physical. Even after they transition, there's opportunities for growth. There's opportunities for healing. Again, keep in mind, people can be stubborn. People can be set in their ways a little bit and they might get a little bit of resistance for a bit. But I think we all have those moments where we've stuck in our heels a little bit longer than we probably should have. And if we had been open to that perspective shift a little bit sooner, different actions or behaviors could have happened. But I was thinking about that a lot because for the majority of the losses that I have had, it has, again, that love has continued to persist. But in this one, I noticed a very big difference. And if anything, I kind of got to know this person on a much more who they actually were versus how they're wounding. I got to know the person versus the person with their wounding in a very different way. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You know what it makes me think about is like if anybody tuning in likes to watch shows where they're watching psychic mediums give readings and loved ones are coming through, it is really not unusual to hear if the person had a difficult relationship with the person who passed, is you hear it regularly. This person has learned things on the other side. This person has changed. That will be included. So that really validates your experience and what you're saying. It's really not uncommon to hear that, but I think people just have a hard time sometimes believing because we have a lot of diversity in beliefs here on earth. So but I really do believe in that for sure.
And I think similar to grieving, there's no timeline to healing, right? So I think some folks, at least when I've done readings, there's been this expectation of, okay, they've been gone for 10 years, they should have this understanding yet. And sometimes they don't, because we know to the other side, time is infinite. It doesn't exist. Right. So I think a lot of us in the physical, we have an expectation of, okay, if they are going to heal, what's the acceptable, time for ourselves? But to them, it's infinite. Right. So, but when I asked my team about that, they said, no, like there's always opportunity. But because we all have our own wounding, that can get in the way of us even being willing to take the opportunity. I look at my role as a counselor, and sometimes people's wounding gets in their own way. It's very hard to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, maybe I didn't show up in the way that I should have, or maybe there's some parts of me that I don't want to look at because it makes me uncomfortable. Right? Maybe I don't want to see myself in a specific way, and that can kind of get in the way, but I don't doubt that their guides and their teams are working with them to heal. Because at the end of the day, we're not the projection of our wounding. We are light at our core.
Yeah. Well, they say that love is eternal. True love is eternal. And I think grief is just another form of love. And
Absolutely.
because you don't grieve someone you don't love, truly. The more you love, the harder it is to recover from that loss. And I think there are some people out there that don't want to stop grieving because somehow they believe that if they stop grieving, then they don't love them anymore. It's their validation of love that continues after they're dead. And I try to have people see it from a different perspective, to know that you can love them in a different way. That love has many forms, many branches that come from it, and grieving is just one of those forms. But to love them in a different way still validates your love for them. So learn to, again, transition from one state of love to another, because you've already done that in the grieving process. So it's learning to change the grief into something else that can not only continue the love, but to amplify it even more, and to form a continuation of relationship with that individual. I'm not anyone that has experienced true loss, like loss of a child or the loss of a sibling. I have lost my parents. I've had a sibling with cancer, and I've had animals that have died. But to truly know what it feels like to lose someone that you feel you can't live without, that's a whole other deep loss that many people do experience here in the world. And I have asked Spirit, and I say, how can people really get through that? Because it's soul crushing to experience that, because we build such strong bonds of attachment with these individuals, and they become our life, not just an aspect of our life, but they become our life. And when we lose them, we lose our life in a way. Everything is gone that we conceptualize as our own universe around them. And so Spirit has always said that we are in a continuous transition of change and evaluation and understanding of our consciousness through this grief and loss. And the other side said, we're working on it. We're working on how to help individuals through that grieving process more. But the main focus was learning to stay connected, but to detach from the attachment of the relationship. And people don't recognize that it becomes a burden of attachment rather than a love attachment in some way. And I couldn't understand what they meant by that. But they said sometimes love can become damaging, that hurts the soul. And they move into a state of grief and loss, then that negativity creates its own form of attachment and obsession. And from there, it's very difficult to move away from that. And so it's a step by step stage, which thank goodness we have grief counselors to help them do that. We have community groups out there that of people that have lost loved ones very much connected to them. I think it's different with parents because with parents, we have an expectation that we will eventually lose them. It is still very difficult, but when you lose someone that you did not have an expectation of loss with, I think that hits us harder because we're not prepared for it as much as we're prepared to lose our grandparents or our parents or even a spouse. There is some level of expectation and preparedness to get us ready for that. Like in our consciousness, we're ready in some way. We don't want it, but we know we can handle it. But I think when it comes to someone very closely connected to you unexpectedly, I think that's when it hits us a little harder because we do put up our wall of protectiveness at all times, especially when we're living here in the physical world. It's a hard world to live in. And I think we're always setting up our boundaries. We're always putting that arm's length there of saying, I'm going to be prepared for this. And I'm putting a buffer so that I'm not going to get that hurt. But when it hits you from an angle that you weren't expecting and you weren't prepared for, I think it hits harder. And so the other side allows that to happen on occasion because this is sometimes you put up too much of a buffer, you don't really feel it. You don't really go through the true experience of loss and grief. And they'll sometimes say, well, you're the soul chose to come in to really experience that because they want to know what it felt like. And I'll tell Spirit, I'm like, well, I bet you they only did it once because it's not something they'd ever want to do again. This isn't anything you'd ever want to wish upon any other soul. And Spirit agrees. They said, we don't know how you guys do it down there because it is so hard for us to watch you go through it that we couldn't even imagine what it was like to truly go through it. We can feel what you're experiencing, but we'll never truly know unless we're down there experiencing it ourselves. And they said, we're not going to do it. We can't. Like some guides up there have gone through it and they can kind of help us through it. But a lot of souls on the other side, they have never even actually come to Earth. They only can watch us and learn from us, but the true experience of the emotional connection and the heartbreak really teaches the soul. And there's going to be a lot of people out there like, I don't want to learn this lesson. And I understand that. And I can sympathize with that. But I think some of the strongest souls are the ones that go through it because it is one of the greater lessons of the human experience. And so I fully support and do whatever I can to help people through that process. Even though I haven't been through it, I can sympathize and I can hold your hand through the experience and just know you're not alone when you are going through this. But there are many people out there that have gone through it, and I think community is wonderful, and I think just joining together and supporting each other and evolving together is what's going to get us through it as well. So I personally just wanted to honor Gigi today in the beginning of the show to let her know that the essence of her spirit will live on in this show. And there will be many times we bring up things that she had said that has really helped us on our personal journey. But I do invite a lot of you to go back and watch some of the older episodes to listen to her and to know that being on the show, she kept telling me being on the show meant everything to her. And I know it was spirit, my guides, her guides getting together, saying we want her to leave a lasting impression in this world before she goes. And so I was honored to be able to hold space for her while she did that. And so I just think I'm honored to be connected to such a wonderful woman. And I'm honored to still be connected to her in the
And I
spirit
wanted
world.
to say something, Amy, just about, and it's not that I'm going to go into it, but it's more of an acknowledgement that, you know, I know today we're talking about grief as it relates to loss, transitioning to the other side. But
Mm-hmm.
grief is an emotion. We experience the loss of many things. And we can, and, you know, when you made the comment about, you know, sometimes love can, and as it relates to grief, can hurt the soul. You know, it triggered, you know, a thought for me about people who go through loss in terms of breakups, even in relationships, and that, you know, holding on too tightly to that grief and not processing it, and how that can weigh on you and hurt you. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, you know, if you're living in a family, let's say, and you experience loss in the family in some way, everybody grieves differently. And so then you've got the complexity of that. And like, you're not even crying about it. And, you know, you said you loved this person, right? When this person's bawling their eyes out. And it's like, just because this person's not bawling their eyes out doesn't mean they're not grieving deeply. And
Right.
it's like just trying to get some education and understanding for yourself. So, you know, there is no shame in joining a support group, going to counseling, getting educated, doing your own type of therapy and connecting with nature, or maybe you're happy with your own support system. But it is worthwhile because, like Amy said, this life experience is difficult, and there is a tremendous amount of suffering. There is joy, there is love, there is laughter, there's those experiences too. But you want to be balanced and resilient and have grit to be able to endure whatever life, you know, is bringing your way. And so I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that. And then you had asked about a sign, and I wanted to offer a very brief story. I had come home, and it was like 9 o'clock at night, and you know, I turned on a lamp and I sat down on the couch and I pulled out my phone, and I noticed that my best friend had tried to call me, and I had text messages from her. And I said to my partner at the time, I said, "Oh, that's weird. You know, so and so was calling me." And I'm like, "She normally never calls me this late at night." And in that moment, the lamp next to me went like it was like it burnt out, but then it came back on. And
Oh,
I was like, I knew instantly that something bad had happened. And I felt that that was a sign of spirit. And when I was able to connect with her immediately, she was out of town with her sisters, and her mother was in our city by herself, and her father had just passed at home. And she said, "Can you please, we're on our way back, can you go be with my mother?" And they had always called me like their fifth sister. I was very close with this family, and I truly feel her dad had was trying to alert me because their mother was in such distress, and I was able to go there and be there with them until they were able to come back and take over. But you know, these are the ways that they try to communicate with us. It's presence, that they're still around, they're paying attention, they know what's going on. You have access to them. They're not beyond your reach. They're not beyond your heart, that's for sure.
no,
Yeah.
not at all.
So as I think we're coming to the time, but I wanted to just kind of acknowledge Jordan, Miss
I
Starship.
was just about to do the same thing.
Yeah,
Just like
girl. Okay, you go ahead, Aim. You do it.
no, I was gonna say on a happy note,
Yeah.
we are really honored to have Jordan Start fill in as our third co-host. Jordan has been a student, a coworker, a friend of ours, and has just blossomed into the most amazing energy worker and medium. And I'm truly honored that she said yes, that she would love to be a co host on the show. And I know that she's going to bring so much to the table as far as her own experiences, because I remember in training, in class, her guides are like, oh, whenever say, oh, a lot of mediums don't do this, and Jordan's guides will become, she's going to do it. And then I'll say something in class like only a small amount of mediums deal with this real heavy stuff, and then I would hear Jordan's guides, Jordan's gonna do it. And it was, and it was just like they kept coming up and telling me all the things that Jordan was gonna do that all these other mediums were not gonna do. And I'm like, okay, I gotta really pay attention to this girl here, because her guides were like blasting this information to me, and they were not gonna like let me get away from listening to these messages. They're like, you're gonna train her, you're gonna help her, you're gonna support her. And I'm like, your guides are very strong, Jordan, to begin with.
My
So
favorite was when you would give a thing and they'd be like, that's not for you. And I'd be like, but Amy said this. And I'd really start sitting on it. And then they'd come give you in trouble in class for being like, tell her this doesn't apply for her. She's going off path.
Right.
And
And
like,
I'd be like, well, most of you don't have to deal with this. And like, but Jordan, you're
yeah.
gonna have to. So
Surprise.
Jordan, if you don't mind just kind of giving everyone who's watching just a little bit of a background on you and how far you've come, and just anything that they can know that's special and unique about you and why we love you so much.
Okay, we're going to put me on the spot.
Well, I did that in class. I could do that here.
Valid. Amy made her speeches. No, so I would say like growing up, I was never the medium that really had a lot of conscious awarenesses of engagement with the spirit world. I always would try to feel out energy. I remember being 5 and knowing that some souls got stuck here. And I remember going out and feeling it out and being like, oh, if anyone's here, if I could help you, I would. And I would cry for them. And then I was like, well, I can't talk to anybody about this. This is weird. So then I would kind of keep it to myself. And I just thought that I just knew people really well because I would sense things, I would know things, but I wouldn't say I had a lot of experiences with souls of earthbounds in particular, or even like loved ones coming in. I didn't get a lot of that until I got older, but I would have enough little experiences here and there where I would see a full apparition every once in a while. And I'm like, oh, okay, this exists. All right. So it was enough to keep me open and interested. But I wouldn't say it was until I got into my teen years where things started ramping up a little bit more on the darker side. And I remember at one point, I had a voice come in and was saying some pretty aggressive, nasty things and trying to get me to do some things to harm myself. And I remember having this deep knowing of I need to ask for help. And so I said, I don't know what's out there, but I want whatever's causing this, I need this to stop. And I actually felt an energy come in and they started arguing with one another of, you can't do this. She said no. Well, I'm here to do a job. Nope. She said no. She's cut it off now. You got to go. And I actually physically felt something being pulled from me. And all of a sudden, all my negative thought patterns, all the emotion that was coming up was instantaneously gone. And I remember thinking, I need to talk to my mom about this. I need to talk to somebody about this. And then I felt maybe hold off on that for a second. There's nothing wrong with you. This is normal. This is going to be something you're going to experience a lot of times. And I'm like, okay. And there was this deep sense of like, I got this. I can handle this. It's fine. And then I just carried on with life. But it wasn't up until a number of years ago where things started amping up a little bit more. My team kind of edged me into the paranormal at first. They got me to start, I know you're going to hate this, Amy. They got me to start watching paranormal programming. But what's interesting is there was a list of them, and kept hearing, no, 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 watch this one. And I'm like, okay. So I went to go watch it. And then before the first episode even started, I heard, listen to how they talk to the earthbound souls. Very loving, very supportive, very humanizing. There was no like trying to ramp this up. And I'm sure, film, television, I'm sure there was a little bit of that, but very different to the program I got to see later. Because I got pinged on by my team of, okay, you can watch some of the other programming now. Very different in some of the dynamics and the energies that were being poked at and prodded a little bit, that I was definitely not prepared for. And so at that point, I started trying to talk to earthbounds, and I had a significant for my own, and I've acknowledged this on the show, and I continue to acknowledge this. I had my own trauma history, and I did a lot of work on myself. Went into the mental health sector, became a therapist, and started supporting people going through their own losses, whether that be grieving the passing of someone or the loss of the sense of self, perhaps due to trauma, interpersonal relationships, loss of what could have been, what was, but also what could have been. And I can see now why, and I remember even as a child being very clear that I was going to become a therapist in some degree or capacity. And I remember the day I finished my education. I've been in education for about 8 years to do all of my accolades that I wanted to get done. And the day that I finished, I submitted my last paper. And I remember looking at my partner at the time saying, I'm not going to be doing this forever. I'm like, I don't know what it is, but this was a stepping stone of where I'm going. And he looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, I don't know why. Looking back, I'm like, I can see how intricately woven my life was, but also the work that I did and the kind of clients that I would get and who I would get connected to and where I felt like I needed to go a bit deeper and how that relates to my spirit work now. Because now I work a lot with, yes, some of the lower frequency energy, but also other energies that come in that either intend to cause harm or non-maliciously do cause harm just because their agendas are very out of alignment with our own best self-interest. And a lot of these energies also carry a lot of wounding, a lot of their own pain, a lot of their own suffering. And so I can see now why that, oh, sorry, my thing went off. I can see now how every path that I took was to lead me to this work. And I'm very grateful for that. And I remember way back when being told you're going to work with demons. And I fought that tooth and nail for months. Because I was like, I was new. I didn't know what was going on. And I remember going, you know what? I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. Maybe I'm being manipulated. Maybe it's something darker. I don't know. And I had an experience that made it very clear to me that I was going to be doing this work. And the first thing I said to them was, you better bring me people in the physical that can teach me and will listen to you, because I know there's a lot of stuff out there that my team might not agree with. I felt that from the get-go. So I said, you better bring me to someone who can actually teach me and can channel your messages, but I also need a community. I need a support system because I can recognize from the get-go that this is not easy work. And there's a lot of discrepancies and misunderstandings of how things might play out on the other side. And I hope that, as we kind of go through this experience with Spirit Rescue Talk, that we can kind of talk a little bit about, how the other side kind of works and the interplaying of dynamics and how at the end of the day, we're all just one big community and we're supporting one another and doing aligned work. Because I always like to tell people there's a million and one ways of working with spirit. Even I look the three of us, I look at Gigi, I look at every person that's come before us. We all have to do things very differently. With our teams differently. The knowledge that we've gotten is very different because every soul is so unique in their own experiences, their own past lives, their awareness, understanding their skill sets is very different.
Right.
It's a competition. There's enough room for everyone.
There is.
We work in community.
Well, we are honored to have you and excited to have you join our discussions. And, I know we're all going to take on different roles on the show. I believe Jordan wants to do a lot of research on a lot of the subjects that we're going to talk about. That way we have these resources and proof that people have, or just, stereotypes or things that people are discussing. That way we can kind of have some constructive thoughts on them and our own personal opinions on them as well. And of course, we have our online way to communicate through us. It's our email. And I'll let Cynthia discuss a little bit more about how you could reach us to Spirit Rescue Talk.
So yeah, I monitor our email at Spirit Rescue Talk. So spiritrescuetalk@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. It could be an experience you had that you're looking for greater insight into. It could be a question about something we discussed on the show that you felt really didn't get addressed and you're really curious about it. It could just be feedback. We're open to feedback, and we definitely look at everything that comes in. Your emails are read, and not only that, but it's discussed before we film our next show. So they're definitely paid attention to. I don't want you to feel like it's just something that's going to get missed. We work very, very hard to go through every email we get, and we talk about it. We might not be able to address every single one on the show, but we do acknowledge them. We do look at them. We do read them, and that it is our preferred communication route as opposed to social media. A lot of people reach out to us on social media and they have questions and stuff like that. And we would prefer if you just send it by email, so it's all in one location. And that helps us get it through a little bit more efficiently.
That's right. And for all of you watching, just so you know, the next episode, we really want to get into more about what Spirit Rescue really is. Because if you were to look online under Spirit Rescue definition, it's almost identical to rescue mediumship. And that's not exactly what Spirit Rescue is. There are so many different modalities involved in Spirit Rescue. So we really wanted to have a discussion on exactly what Spirit Rescue is, the different skill sets that come to the table and provide assistance in doing Spirit Rescue, and how some of you might actually be involved in Spirit Rescue without even realizing you are, just by what you do out in the community, what you do for spiritual work, and how you bring more light into the dark. So we want to thank all of you for joining us today. We want to honor Gigi and the Essence of Her Soul being with us today. And just let us know if you have any questions, and leave your comments below. We're looking forward to seeing you again next time.